Hello, I want to welcome everyone to The Power of Our Story. On Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we will have a weekly storytelling evening where each one of our 29 authors of our book, Wounds to Wisdom, Healing Through Veteran and First Responder Narratives, will read their own story from the book. Our collaborative effort is a labor of love from all of us to those protectors who may be suffering in silence. All are welcome to join us. So tonight, I want to welcome Chaplain Todd Stewart, otherwise known to all of us as Chappie. And a little bit about Chappie. He is a Trauma Resiliency Peer Coach with 22-0. He was born and raised in the state of Washington. He served with the Federal Way Fire Department in Washington from 1981 to 1987 and was a third-generation first responder in his family. Chappie's firefighting career was cut short by a severe back injury sustained while battling a house fire. After suffering the effects of post-traumatic stress injury in silence for 3 decades, he was finally able to get the help he needed in 2020. He lives in Waukee, Iowa, and has since dedicated himself to serving his first responder family as a chaplain with the United States Chaplain Taskforce and the First Responders Bridge. So Chappie, I want to welcome you tonight. We're excited to hear your story.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I read my chapter, I'm going to read a poem that I wrote not too long ago. There is an incredible artist, and her name is Invader Girl, and she paints some amazing stuff. And if you look at this painting, it's called "Suck It Up," and it's the painting. It shows a firefighter holding the lifeless body of a 6-year-old girl in front of a car that's been destroyed by a drunk driver. And that painting depicts a very specific incident that happened. And if you look, there is this emanation of death that's coming from this young girl, and the firefighter is inhaling it. And the painting is entitled "Suck It Up." And I think some of us, or maybe most of us, know what that phrase means. And so I'm going to read this poem because I want my recovery story. It's incredibly profound. And in order to know how profound that recovery story is, this poem illustrates how profound the place of darkness was that I came from. And so this is the poem, "Suck It Up." Suck it up, they said, and so I did. Like so much black smoke, I inhaled death, held it deep inside, emotional carcinogen. The lifeless bodies I left behind, carrying the cries of loved ones away with me. The demon was flattering. Good, good, you're doing so well, keeping the darkness at bay. You don't need God. Your strength is enough. Bury it deeper and don't let the black seep out. So full of death compressed in my soul, the vessel is cracking. The black is seeping out. You're the fucking hero, the demon said. Or maybe you're just a worthless fraud. Go ahead and cry. See how that works out. In the blink of an eye, I was the hero no more. All I was gone. I'm lost and alone. No, We're all still here, my dad said to me. You failed to save us, so with you we'll stay. Every nightmare a reminder of your weakness. Every night I stared into myself, the eyes of my dead staring back at me. My own death was there, looking out from the black. I should have died in that fire, I said to the demon. Don't worry, he answered. We'll take care of that soon enough. We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. The book of Romans, chapter 5, verses 3 through 5. Standing here in the light, I am grateful to God for the suffering that I endured. I am grateful because I know that my suffering had purpose. I am grateful because those years spent in darkness led to a calling from God to serve my brothers and sisters. Looking back, it was really a perfect setup. I'm the son and grandson of sheriff's deputies in King County, Washington, a young boy who idolized his father, his hero. Becoming a first responder was in my DNA. It was what Stewarts do. All I ever wanted was to fulfill the Stewart legacy, to serve my community, save lives, and become a hero like my father. In 1981, at 17 years old, I became a firefighter with the Federal Way Fire Department. 6 years of service resulted in 30 years of suffering. Knowing what I know now, it was suffering I would surely endure again, given God's calling in my life. Suck it up, rookie. The next call is coming and it's going to be more fucked up than the last. That was my first critical incident stress debriefing. Following the suicide of a 15-year-old boy. I can still see his mother's face as she begged me to save him. Suck it up, I did. I was living in Station 4 as a part-time firefighter, responding 24/7 for 3 years, the equivalent to 6 years as a career firefighter. SIDS, suicides, shootings, fatality DUIs, the death piled up. The lives I saved forgotten, but those I couldn't revisited me at night, pronouncing my failure. The cries of their loved ones echoed in my head. I loved my job more than anything, but I knew something wasn't right. Still, I kept my mouth shut. Suck it up. In 1985, we rolled out on yet another DUI collision. Another drunk asshole collided head-on with a young family on Interstate 5. Mom and dad were dead. The beautiful young girl in the back was still alive. We gave it our all, but by the time we cut the roof off the car, she had joined her parents in eternal rest. I snapped. My lieutenant pulled me off the drunk driver. He let it slide. I kept my mouth shut, but inside I screamed, suck it up. In an instant, it was all gone. A house fire. It was the adrenaline-fueled break from the day-to-day carnage. I ran the second nozzle up the stairs in a heavily involved split level when the stairs collapsed. I hung there by my armpits and SCBA tank, my back fractured and my legs burning up. My brothers saved my life, but there were days that followed when I wished they had let me burn. I was lost. My entire identity was being a firefighter, and it was all gone. I had failed to fulfill the family legacy, just as I had failed those I could not save. The nightmares became more frequent, only bloodier and soaked in death. Still, I said nothing. Suck it up. For years it went on, and no one knew. Not my beautiful wife, not my parents, no one. Life devolved into a meth-fueled fight to keep from sleeping. You can imagine how that worked out. Divorced, estranged from my children, friends, and family. In 2003, I decided to end my suffering with a .45 caliber hollow point. That night, lying on the floor of a drug house, God intervened. A vision of my 4 beautiful daughters kept that hammer from falling. And so I decided to live and suffer. For 17 years, I existed in a fog of nightmares, pot smoking, waiting. 2020 changed everything. Cities burned, rampant lawlessness, and the pandemic, a force multiplier, made the already insane world batshit crazy. Law enforcement officers were suddenly the enemy. Brothers and sisters were dying nearly every day, more by their own hand than anyone else's. It wasn't any better for my beloved firefighter and EMS family. Even decades out of the fire service, every death had a profound emotional impact on me. My nightmares became more frequent, and I could not see a way out of the pain except for ending my own life. It was time. My daughters were grown. I could finally be done with it. Was God punishing me for my failures, or had He simply forgotten me? It didn't matter. Nobody would care. And I didn't blame them. I decided to free myself from the pain. Again, God intervened. I was sitting in my truck, that pistol on my hip. It seemed to weigh 100 pounds. My phone rang, and I felt compelled to answer. It was my best friend, Brian, a former corrections officer. Hey, Brian, what's up? I'm worried about you, brother. I'm seeing stuff from you that really scares me, and I just wanted to check on you and see how you're doing. I'm fine, I replied. We both know that's bullshit, brother. I love you. Tell me what's going on. It was a buddy check, a simple gesture from someone who genuinely cared. Wait, someone cared? God was urging me to tell Brian my story, and suddenly it all came flooding out. 30 years worth of living in total blackness poured out, things I had never told another soul. As I spilled my failures, shame, and self-hatred, the impenetrable darkness was pierced by the tiniest ray of light. I promised Brian I would reach out for help immediately. I was skeptical about calling my employees and my company's employee assistance program. The memories that haunted me were gruesome, bloody, and filled with death. Could I inflict that on another person, even if it was their job? The EAP felt like a crapshoot. Could anyone understand what I was going through? I called anyway. God was at work. I showed up at Peter's office, convinced this was doomed to fail. Who is this guy, and why did he think he could be of any help to me? I was only half listening as Peter told me about himself. Wait, what? Did he just say he was a former cop? He would understand. For the first time in a long time, I thanked God. Only he could have pulled this off. After 3 weeks working with Peter, I was referred to a psychologist for diagnosis, PTSD and hypervigilance. Peter then introduced me to Jill, a talented trauma therapist, and we began the journey of healing my brain using EMDR. I was still living in a very dark place, but now that tiny ray of light had gotten a little brighter. A word crept into my thoughts that had not been there for 30 years. Hope. It wasn't long until the light started to win. Hope is a powerful healer. The traumatic experiences quickly transformed from nightmare-inducing to bad but distant memories. During this time, I found my tribe, the power of our story. This close-knit group of protectors welcomed me and gave me a safe place to tell my story without shame or embarrassment. It led to amazing things. In February of 2021, I told my story to Matt, a chaplain with the New York State Chaplain Taskforce. He said, God has a purpose for you. Use your suffering to help your first responder family. I was floored. What happened next is hard to articulate. God's Holy Spirit spoke to me. Matt is speaking God's calling for you. This is the purpose the Father has prepared for you. I was dumbstruck. My years of suffering were not God's punishment, nor had he forgotten about me. My suffering had purpose. Everything that I had been through was led by God. He was equipping me for his calling. I broke down crying. Since that moment, God has continued to bless me. He has provided me with so many opportunities to minister, not just to first responders, but others who have lost hope, suffered from trauma, and needed a caring presence. God is always in charge. God is sovereign over all things. Your suffering has purpose. You don't know what his plan is for you, but it is a perfect plan. In his time, he will reveal his purpose for your affliction. Trust him. I stand in the light of God's enduring love, and the light of recovery from my suffering, and the light of serving others. Were all those years of suffering worth it? Absolutely. If I had not experienced that darkness, I could not serve my brothers and sisters, first responders. If you are reading this and you are suffering, know that God is with you. He has a plan for you. There is purpose in what you are going through. Let go of the shame and grasp hold of hope.
Wow, that was powerful. Chappie, thank you. Thank you. I want to open it up to everybody, whoever wants to respond. We probably have to take a breath.
Recording.